Eric, but it always happens to me when I have guests from America. And I often say this, and I'm not going to stop saying it, that it is breakfast time for you all and it's dinner time for me in India. So, good morning to you. And you don't have to wish me good night because I'm going to be totally alert on all what you're going to talk about. And there's a standard work I have to do. And that is to introduce you. And that's what I'm going to do.
Excellent. Well, it's good to be here.
There we go. Eric A. Bud, you're on Series 1. The Series 1 I started 2.5 years ago. And you're on the 53rd episode. So, supporting and sustaining continuous improvement processes.
Excellent.
So, the basic thing is you may implement it the way you want to. I mean, you can take Lean Six Sigma. These days you got different shades of lean. You know that, and we know that. So it doesn't matter to me. But how do you support and sustain it, scaffold it so that it gets sustained? There would be a drip and all that. And I'm a strong believer that there is no start line or end line for lean transformation. That's the reason it is called continuous. And to add Deming, since you're going to talk about Deming, he always says continual. So technically, it is continuous, continual improvement as far as I'm concerned. So you have the SDCA and then you have a PDCA. So it moves on continuously, although it sounds oxymoron, doesn't it? Sustaining and continuous. But that's not what I meant. I meant it is continual improvement. Yeah. Well, you are the designer, instructor in Institute of Quality and Innovation. And Deming spoke a lot about both of them and his definition of quality and his definition of innovation. I'm just a student and of 12 Days to Deming, which is developed by Henry Neve. And my mentor is Mr. Balaji Reddy. So I've just completed the 7th day during the last 1.5 years. So I mean, so I love what you're going to talk about, and what you told me that this is what you're going to talk about is the learning principle and practices used to teach Deming's principles in your institute, that is Institute of Quality and Innovation Academy. And ever since I started this podcast was basically to understand what are the different thoughts behind lean and continuous. But these days I call it lean TPS so that I'm very clear of what I'm talking about and not different shades of lean. I had guests, and you're on the 53rd episode. So I got all my speakers in America. You can see the beautiful pearl ring over there, the guest speakers that have come from across America, from Jamaica, Canada, and then from Europe, India, down there to Australia, Japan, and South Korea. So it has been a journey for me, and learning from different sources of how they interpret lean and what are they, and from various sectors too. So welcome to Dr. Rem's podcast. So I'm based in the western side of India, and that is Mumbai. And my only mission is to connect a continuous improvement professional across the world so that they can exchange their knowledge, and there's cross-pollination that takes place. So having said that, I intentionally did not get into your profile because there in LinkedIn and all of us know you. So I thought I'd leave that part to you to introduce yourself. How did you get into this Institute of Quality and Innovation? And then we talk about uh, how uh, how your Institute of Quality Innovation goes ahead to imbibe or inculcate Deming's principle in leaders and people who come over there. Over to you, Eric, and don't mind me interrupting now and there, just to clarify myself.
Thanks, Dr. M. I appreciate the invitation to be here, and it's good to speak with you and good to see you again. Good to see you're healthy and interacting with people again. It's a good thing. I'm impressed by the work that you've been doing to learn and develop. It's powerful to have conversations like you're having with people around the planet, and I appreciate you sharing things like you do with us. And I feel honored to be asked to be one of the people on your podcast. So thank you for inviting me.
Oh, nice of you to have come.
Thank you. I had a chance to learn first about Dr. Deming's work when I was a quality advisor at EDS, Electronic Data Systems, when we were working on the General Motors account. I was part of a group called People Systems Division. And that People Systems Division had about 400 different programmers that ran all of General Motors' HR systems, their payroll, their personnel, their benefits, their retirement system. All those systems were under the umbrella of, at least on the system side of the EDS People Systems Division. And our division manager at one time, Tom Shear, had decided that he needed to take our division to the next level of performance. And he brought in Phil Crosby to teach Crosby University at our division. A few weeks into the program, I got a message from a manager 2 levels above me. Her name was Prudence Cole. My boss said, "Prudence would like to see you, Eric." And I was a bit concerned. I didn't interact with her too often. She directly reported to Tom. So she was the direct report of the division president. She came in, I came into her office and we sat down and she said, "Eric, Tom's got Phil Crosby's university running here. And out of 400 plus people in the division, there's only one person that's not doing their Crosby homework, and that's you." And I said, "Well, when I was going to school, I worked at a integrated circuit facility, and my job as etch inspect made me inspect integrated circuits, their leads for width after they had been etched and after been laid out and then etched and then I inspected them, and I had to sign off on every we call them boats, but groups of 20 wafers would come through, and we'd put photoresist on the wafers, expose it, etch off the unexposed photoresist, and then there'd be a layer of circuit left, and I would look to see if those circuits were wide enough for according to our specifications. There's a boat that a lot that didn't meet specifications, so I called a process engineer over, and at the time this organization was following Crosby's definition of quality, which is conformance to specifications. So my assumption is conformance to specifications means the specifications stay fixed and you try and make sure you hit the specifications. That was my assumption about that. When the process engineer came over, I said, "This lot doesn't meet specifications." He said, "Well, I'll let you pass it." I said, "I'm not going to sign it because it doesn't meet specifications." So on the run card, he crossed out the old spec and wrote a new spec so this lot could pass. So right then and there, I felt that I learned a lesson about conformance to specifications that if that's your only definition, you could run into trouble because of the way people operate around it. So when I explained this to Prudence, I said, my commitment is to having good quality in the organization. And I don't believe in this definition of quality. I don't think it's a good one because of the funny business that can happen around it. She said, okay, Eric, I get it. But I'd appreciate Tom getting off my back. Would you please do your homework? So I finished my homework. Tom Shear went off to run GMAC, the EDS systems piece of that unit. Prudence got promoted to being division president. And just shortly after she was promoted, I got a call and said, Prudence wants to see you. She wasn't in her office when I showed up, but there's a red folder on her table. I'm thinking, all right, she decided I got to go because of my behavior in the past. And that wasn't the case. What showed up was every division president on the General Motors account was supposed to name a quality advisor for themselves. And Prudence said to me, Eric, because of your commitment to quality, I'd like you to be my quality advisor. She says, I don't know how to implement quality in my organization. Do I walk around saying quality, quality, quality? She didn't know what, like, what do I do? And I was relatively new in that field. So I started asking around. Someone said, well, there's a group that's you should get in touch with, and that's the Quality Consulting and Resource Center, which eventually I ended up working with and becoming a part of that team. But at the time they said, well, we're doing work with Dr. Deming. And I had never heard of him. My first inclination was to learn something about his practices, his principles. And they said, well, he's, where has he done work? And one of the mentions was Gallery Furniture down in Texas. So I made a phone call down there, just a cold call, and a salesperson picked up. I said, hey, I'm trying to learn something about Dr. Deming. Tell me about what's happened in your organization. And his story about the before and after of implementing Dr. Deming's work in an organization that had used commissions, kind of competition between salespeople, and the shift to working cooperatively, working on salary, and the difference in the workplace, the difference in the service to customers, the immaculate way that the showroom now became cared for because people weren't chasing customers every time they walked in the door, those kind of things. They could work as a team. It sounded like a much better, and the much richer joy and work type environment. I thought, wow, if implementing this approach does those sort of things in a furniture store, excuse me, I thought this is something I need to learn about. So I had an opportunity to begin volunteering at Dr. Deming's 4-day seminars that he was conducting at General Motors. I became part of the team that EDS used to support the seminars. I had an opportunity to work with some of the assignments that groups had at the end of the day. I started learning about Dr. Deming that way. And so that led me into the work I was doing around continual improvement. Several years later, I ended up working at a United Technologies Corporation, Fire and Security. They had a program called ACE, Achieving Competitive Excellence. It was a mixture of quality and lean methodologies. We worked closely with a group called Shingijutsu. We had senseis from that area come in and help run events that we prepared our organization for. I had an opportunity over the space of about 1.5 to 2 years of doing multiple week-long events with these Shingijutsu senseis in the US and and in Europe, implementing pretty intense changes via lean methodologies. Usually, these guys were ex-Toyota, so there is TPS that they were implementing. But I learned some lean methodologies. What I noticed is that there is such a compatibility between what Dr. Deming taught and the lean methodologies that the Shingijutsu senseis were implementing, that I don't see a conflict at all. I see a cooperation between the two. Yes. You're on mute, Doctor.
Was Sensei Iwata there with them or Naka, was anybody like that? Huh? The Senjutsu group?
Pardon me?
Was Sensei Iwata there when the Senjutsu group came to your?
Yeah, so there was some people managed the whole UTC relationship, and then others came and managed the events at our facility. Okay. I would have to look up their names. I had three or four that I ended up working with.
Fine. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my introduction to some fairly intense learning and application about lean methodologies. So it was kinder gentler with ACE, but with the Shingijutsu senseis, one of the key things I learned from one of our senseis was, we would start off, we prepare the teams that would be working with them ahead of time, doing value stream mapping work, identifying the project they wanted to work on when the sensei showed up. We'd have 3 or 4 teams do a opening presentation the Monday morning of the week they were there. The sensei would say, okay, you go off and start your work. And then he'd go visit the different work locations for the activities. Then he'd come back to the room and do some work. And occasionally someone would come in and ask him a question because he had seen where the workplaces were. They'd ask his advice about something. He never answered a question in the room. It was fascinating to me. He would always say, it was the first words out of his mouth via the translator, but the first words out of his mouth was, let's go see. That was a profound lesson for me. There is so much to be gained by being where the work is done, that anybody who thinks that they can answer questions about what to do next, not where the work is being done, but in an office or a boardroom or something, is making a big mistake. And it was really clear, because pretty soon you could see very easily, oh, we're going to run into a problem with this space or this beam or that pipe or some version of that, or there's somebody else coming in here that has to do something with this situation, or these need to line up differently. There's a variety of things that show up that the answer, let's go see, needs to be translated into a variety of different situations and ways. But that's just a profound lesson that I learned from being next to our senseis, is that seeing the work and actually working with the people doing the work is essential to be able to producing improvements. So, the combination of these two things were just easy to fit together. I didn't see any conflict. On occasion, I hear, there's not a full respect for one approach to, or one methodology to the other. I've heard somebody say, Deming is like the basic principles and practice of principles, and TPS is kind of like the how-to manual for applying those principles and practices. It's an interesting way to put that. So I appreciate that both the lean methodologies that are tightly connected to the Toyota production system, and of course Deming's work is what I'm trying to teach in the IQI Academy, and there's certain ways that people learn best, I think, and see some kind of transformation. When I was at UTC, one of the things that was required of everyone in the organization at the time was to become an ACE associate. One of the requirements was they had to participate in 2 events, like a value stream mapping event or some kind of Kaizen event. And I was working with a group in the accounting department, and one of the gentlemen in the accounting department, I was trying to line up people for the next set of activities we were going to be performing. And we could have, for instance, we had events in shipping or the shop and the machine shop that had people from all over the organization. It could be customer service, could be accounting, could be executives. production. It didn't matter where you were; you could come work on an event within in a particular any area when we had one. This gentleman said to me, Eric from accounting, he said, "I'm going to be retiring soon. I don't need this stuff." And I asked him, "Well, how soon are you retiring?" He said, 5 years. And I said, 5 years? That's a long time to be waiting, not doing this. I said, how about if you just joined us in the machine shop? We had a TPM event, a total productive management, total productive maintenance event activity for that week. And when he was done with that event, he had helped clean things, he had helped color code things, he helped put signs on things, he'd helped rearrange the facilities in the area, he rearranged tools, he did a variety of things in that event. When he got done, he volunteered to be the ACE champion for his department. It shifted his perspective on what was possible just by participating. So one of those things that's a lesson that I bring to the academy is that it's really important to get your hands into the change activity and find out what's required and then what's possible when you start to apply what you're learning, rather than just talk about it. Viewing a course online, reading a book, those are all things that go into your brain, but there's not a guarantee at all that anything comes out. And so what happens is you have to integrate it into your workplace. And that's some of the things that I try to work with during the academy. And I have some slides if I could show you some things. I'm going to share my screen. Is that okay? All right. So we've got just some very simple things that we try to apply in the IQI Academy. And this is just, I'm going to give you just a really high level. This is the basic structure or format that we have for the academy. We used to call them days because we used to run one day every 2 weeks when we were in person. Then during COVID, we shifted to online and we transformed the format completely. One of the concepts that we work with is, let me see if I can get my other stuff here. Is, we have this concept that there's kind learning environments and wicked learning environments. And kind learning environments are the kind that we experience in our classrooms, in our sports, the things where cause and effect are tightly related. There's rules that apply to everything. There's boundaries around which the cause and effect relationships occur within. In wicked learning environments, that's not the case. You can have cause and effect really distant in time and space. So you can do something today and have an effect show up years later. There's unpredictability. The feedback you get from your system may or may not be telling you the thing that has to do with your actions. So it's really challenging to learn within a wicked learning environment. And yet that's what we operate within all the time. And so it's really important for us to practice as if we're in our wicked learning environments and learn within that environment, rather than do rehearsed tests and quizzes and things like that really aren't helping you learn. They're helping you hand back the marbles kind of thing. Teacher hands a marble back and you out and you pass back that marble and a nugget of knowledge or information, but that's not what we do. So we have this structure that we've got 6 units. We have daily sessions in each unit now that have 10 45-minute sessions. It happens during the weekdays. We do have pre-work that occurs. There's daily teach to learn conversations, as well as weekly PDSA learning cycles. So by the end of the course, participants have completed about 50 teach to learn conversations with people in their work environment. They've run at least 10 weekly PDSA cycles. So there's a lot of application work that happens immediately as they go through their sessions. Several years ago, we had, we decided we wanted, let me shift something here. There we go. We had these kind of things that we structured as our learning approaches. We wanted to make sure learning was spaced, and we were working on integrating our learning with our workplaces. We had reviews, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the reviews. What do we apply? What do we teach? Or what do we talk about? And then, of course, within the course, we had small group discussions and activities. And then, of course, we had project assignments that we did. Now, today we have 3 basic learning fundamental practices that help cement the learning that people are doing. The key one that I've noticed that has the biggest impact on people is their daily teach to learn conversations. After our 45-minute session, their assignment is to go have a conversation with somebody and teach them what they just learned, and then write up a short description of not what they taught, but what did they learn about themselves by attempting to teach. So it's not a, take this marble, hand it to another person kind of activity. It's introspection on what is showing up for me as I'm trying to learn and apply this concept. What am I bumping into? We also use the PDSA cycles, and then I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but we don't have a day that's devoted to theory of knowledge. But we spend every day of the course talking about some aspect of the theory of knowledge, and we use mind mapping, and I'll show you an example or two of mind maps. So here's one of the principles that we use, and a lot of these principles can be found in Make It Stick, but you can find them in other learning research sources. Trying to solve a problem before being taught the solution leads to better learning, even when errors are made in the attempt. So one of the challenges we run into is your brain ready to learn? And one of the ways to get your brain and the neurons firing around a topic is to make an attempt on, well, what might be the solution? The minute you have that kind of question in your brain, you're much more capable or able to absorb things that have a connection to that question. It's much different than someone just handing you an answer. When you're seeking an answer, you're trying to, your brain actually looks at what are all the different patterns and connections that could fit the question I'm attempting to answer. So it's a powerful approach. All new learning requires a foundation of prior knowledge. We actually have people take on as pre-work to the course, developing a project. And I'll talk about that in a little bit, but basically we say, we want you to pick a project that applies to your workplace and that you're doing as part of your regular job, not something that's extra and only a course related project. So we want something that's hands-on. I do this, and then I'll show you the criteria we use to develop that. And learning is deeper and more durable when it's effortful. Frequently on course satisfaction or course feedback forms, people get frustrated when they feel like it was difficult or hard. And yet they might actually be learning better when it's difficult or hard when they're challenged. Because when you're working at it, your brain is struggling to rewire itself in some sense. If you're always having something that's easy to learn, it's really probably not learning that's going on. It might be recognition that's happening. And so it's an important thing for us to distinguish between, am I learning and it might be hard, or is this easy and it might be like, I'm not really learning here. So we also have in our daily teach to learn, we use these concepts: retrieval, elaboration, and practice. And then of course we have the idea of a network of conversations, which we learned from Nicholas Christakis. So, so those are other concepts that we use because it's very important to not only retrieve and elaborate, but when we retrieve information, it's having us recall it from memory. Elaboration is putting it into our own words, and practicing is actually using it in a different context than what we might be learning it. This is a version of our checklist. As you can see here, one of the first things we do, in fact, I'm going to see if I can blow this up on a magnify, is the assignment is read the new economics before the course starts. So everybody who goes through the academy is asked to read the new economics, and then also begin already to teach 3 different people about some concept they learned during their reading. So right away, it gets them into this interaction with the material in a way that most people don't when they're reading something. So it's one of the key things that we use as preparation for the course. The other, of course, is to generate at least 5 project ideas, and then we score them with our criteria. So we can pick a project that will be an effective learning mechanism in our course. I got something beeping at me. I got to turn this off. Sorry, I did not do that ahead of time. And then, of course, we asked them, just like Dr. Deming shows us in the new economics, he creates a small, simple deployment flow chart. So I have them sketch out a flow chart of their process so they have some view of how their process flows. And it feeds into the concept of, if you're going to improve something, you have to move something. And a deployment flow chart gives us a visual of, there's some things that we can actually take and move around in this process. I can join things together. I can have somebody else do it. I can move it before or after a step. So visually, you have something to begin with right away to work with that conversation. And then we ask people to answer the 3 basic questions, and they don't know what the 3 basic questions are. They don't know how to answer them. I learned the 3 basic questions from Ron Moen and Cliff Norman at Associates in Process Improvement. They're the ones that wrote the improvement guide. They also came up with quality as a business strategy as part of Associates in Process Improvement. Tom Nolan, Gerald Langley, there's a variety of other really key people that participated in API that helped formulate the 3 basic questions. These aren't unique, I don't think, to QBS or to API, but they're questions that help you focus not only what are you trying to do, but also the correct sequence in answering the questions of where should we go. So we read the new economics, and we have people teach something from the new economics to someone else. A lot of times they're bumping into ideas that are maybe in conflict with what they've been taught in management school up to this point in their career. It's very interesting. So then we do the teach to learn conversations. We have elaboration, retrieval, elaboration, and practice, and then of course our network of conversations. And this is actually an iteration of something that years ago in the academy we called it, what did you learn? What did you teach? What did you try to apply? And during the daily sessions, we would have them come back from the previous session and post some kind of note about what they did since the last session to apply what they were learning. And the review of that looked kind of like this. It was very simple. And in this case, this participant said, I learned it, I taught it, and I tried to apply it. And in this case, it was operational definitions. And this person met with the president of his business about establishing clear operational definitions through the workplace. So this is one of those nice benefits that we start to see of people taking on this kind of activity. Others in their organization get to learn from or be influenced by what's being taught in the academy. Here's another one. Whoops, let me go back. So without, they're dealing with variation, trying to understand the two types of variation. This is something they learned. They're saying it's important to always evaluate the variation to determine if it's a special cause or common cause. Now, at this point, they haven't even come to the point where they've learned how to create a control chart. Yet they're still learning the concepts, and it'll be in the background of their minds as they start to go through the course. Today's version of the applied taught or learned applied to taught is a form like this, and I'll show you more detail. So this so people fill out their form. They just say their name. It's very simple. They talk about, well, what was the concept they tried to teach? And then who did I teach it to? And then what is my relationship to them? I'm changing what I think are the important criteria, because as I've learned some things about what makes change happen in a way that creates the critical mass in an organization, having somebody, like seeking to have somebody outside your organization or even above your chain of command may not be as effective as teaching it to people within your work group, and having people within your work group actually start to reinforce concepts and behaviors together. That's applying that's realizing that the viral model of change so the viral model of disease transmission doesn't work for change, and yet oftentimes we operate as if it does, and we should think differently about that. And then this is the key part, what I learned about myself by trying to teach this concept. So Tyler has this wonderful explanation, and I'm going of what he learned, and so he says, here's my struggle. So this is really fascinating. So he's looking at, I've struggled with this. This is the type of person I am, and this is the sort of that planning that I've been doing that seems incompatible with what I'm being taught. So this is fascinating because he has a really good description of what he's dealing with while trying to teach this concept, and what he's facing as he goes through dealing with this concept in the academy. Now, Monica, which is interesting, is a graduate. So Monica had said she struggled with the same thing. So he was teaching somebody who had already been through the academy in this particular situation. And she gave him some interesting guidance. Excuse me. So it's fascinating to see how people interact with those others around them. And what's fascinating is, Monica says, don't get frustrated. IQI is transforming the way I think and approach problems, and transforming the way you think is challenging. So she's giving them a heads up going, this isn't going to be easy, and transformation is what we're looking at here. And then he says, this is what was useful about talking to Monica about this. And he says, this is what was most important about our interaction. What I first heard was, I half dismissed it as some sort of new age self-help. That sounds nice, but is ultimately devoid of meaning. Now I realize how accurate it is. I need to be willing to take steps without knowing what the outcome will be, and then adjust my next step using what I learned. So this is fascinating. So not only do I get to see what people are learning, what they're dealing with, but each night as I read through the feedback that they provide on their Teach to Learn forms, I also get to see where do I need to shift my teaching or have a conversation with this particular individual. And I frequently send emails back to people responding to, here's some things that you said that we might need to address. Or sometimes I bring it back to the whole group because that's an approach that I realize I might have made a mistake in, and I might have communicated something incorrectly. So this is a very powerful way for me to actually become a better teacher, as well as them have more learning experiences. And so then these are examples of quotes from other Teach to Learn notes. We were dealing with voice of the customer and making a distinction between need and job to be done was an important concept we were teaching. That's not a Deming concept. It's something from Clayton Christensen, but we were using it. And then I learned that the PDSA cycle is relatable. So again, this is something that, how does it relate to me, rather than this is what I'm teaching, and not having you be part of this conversation, because it's very important for people to realize what's going on in their head, because that's where improvement's going to come from. And this one, discussing this concept with Catherine, I realized how much the system affected the individual. And when I originally read this concept in the book, I had doubts and how it might apply. So this is really interesting that people have this ability to describe, hey, I had these doubts, and now I'm seeing there might be something different going on here. So that's the Teach to Learn conversation. So as I mentioned, we ask people to generate project ideas, at least 5 each, for them to evaluate and pick a project to work on throughout the academy. And these are just examples of different project ideas that people generate. I ask them to talk with at least 3 other people about each idea. And then we use a scoring criteria to evaluate what's going to be a successful academy project. So the first and most important one that we deal with, we scan through these. I don't know, do I have? Yeah, let me go back. So the first and most important one that we deal with is frequency of activity. And we look at that, and this is important because if people are going to evaluate what's going on in their workplace, they need to be able to work on something that happens on a regular basis, hopefully daily, because then if they make a change in the process, they can actually see it working. Do they have support from other people? Do they have freedom to act in it? IT resources, if you notice the scoring here, IT resources gets a negative number because it's almost impossible to get people who are in IT, who are focused on the production environment, to have time to work on projects like this for us. So anytime you're going to wait for an IT resource, it's going to be a problem. And then, of course, do you have an opportunity to learn? So those are things. And then when we go back to making sure that people are addressing the 3 basic questions before they start the course, these are the 3 basic questions I learned in this format from API, Ron Moen and Cliff Norman specifically. The sequence is very important. What are we trying to accomplish? How will we know a change is improvement? And what moves can we make that will result in improvement? Now, they worded it, what changes can we make? And I've modified that slightly because I want people to be clear on, in order to make a change that's going to have an impact, you have to move something. Almost everybody wants to answer question number 3 first. What can we change? And then go forward. However, if we set up what's our goal, and then how will we evaluate what our goal is, that's important. And we want to define that before we start the project. At the Quality Consulting and Resource Center at EDS, we had EDS leadership down in Plano, Texas, call us up in the Detroit area and say, hey, we've been running this project for a couple of years with our leadership, and we want to know whether or not we've produced an improvement. How do we measure that? And our first response is, well, go back in time and define what you define as improvement. Because right now you don't have a before after image that you can actually take. So it's one of those challenges where you should know what you're going to declare as what an improvement looks like before you start your work. That's a simple, basic concept, but not everybody understands it and applies it. When we generate ideas for moves to improve, I use what the senseis used to try and do with us on our 3P production preparation process of generate at least 7 different ideas around what you want to improve. Because as I've noticed, when people generate 2 or 3 ideas, their standard way of thinking is just showing up in those 2 or 3 ideas. They're just iterations of the same way of thinking about things. When we evaluate improvement ideas that people have produced using 7 ideas, what we notice is 5, 6, and 7 usually are better ideas than 2, 3, and 4, especially when you have predetermined criteria around which to evaluate our ideas. So that's a very good way of looking at something. This is a key around our PDSA cycles. And helping somebody identify something to move is really critical. Frequently, managers don't understand this concept. They give people a goal, they have a target, they have a KPI, but they don't understand there's actually got to be something in the business that's moving. It could be an agenda item, it could be who you work with, it could be when people are doing things, move a time. There's a variety of things that show up as a move, but you need to be able to move something. And then, of course, our plan, do, study, act cycle is primary for actually implementing things that we're learning during the process. So we start off with the 3 basic questions, and then hopefully we get to changes that really are improvements. So this is our learning and improvement cycle we do every week. And then what's the 3 basic questions like we talked about? Oh, did I just go into a loop here? Here we go. So Nicholas Christakis has a TED Talk that I highly recommend to people, The Hidden Influence of Social Networks. And one of the key things he talked about was a variety of things, from happiness to obesity can spread from person to person, and a person 3 nodes away from you, someone you may not even know, may have an influence on you and your behavior because of the way your social network is influencing you. This is a powerful concept. And I think it's neglected when we look at how do we impact transformation or change in any organization. And this wasn't enough, because I wrote to Nicholas Christakis and got a quick response. I asked him, hey, have you thought about the concept of critical mass in organizations? And what would that critical mass be if you have? And he said, no, I haven't. My research partner might have, and contact him. So I didn't get much of a response from him. It was nice that he responded, but his research partner was on sabbatical at the time. So I haven't pursued that train of thought, but that's something to look at. Now, our daily teach to learns, this is one of the things that is powerful in this concept. This idea of, if we look at this, we're not only changing what this person as a participant in the academy is thinking about. So we have a person talking to somebody else, and what's happening is they're actually shifting the interactions. And this is a key thing when we understand appreciation for a system. When you appreciate a system, what you manage is not the parts, but the interactions and the interdependencies of the parts. And so if we're going to shift how people work together, we have to shift how they interact. And shifting the interactions occurs during teach to learn conversations. One of our participants said partway through the course, I went to my cube mate and said, hey, would you be part of my teach to learn conversation today? A cube mate from over the wall stuck his head up, she said, and said, oh, can I come too? Because he had been part of previous teach to learn conversations and he was enjoying it. So there's this interaction that starts to shift how people work together and learn together that comes from this type of having conversations about things that they're learning, trying to apply, and maybe concepts they're struggling with. So it helps us make a shift in how we're working together. And then, of course, here's a variety of samples of types of teach to learn concepts or topics that people have shared during their academy experience. And typically it's 50 plus conversations per participant. We teach the 14 points. We have them do a evaluation grid and score that with other people in their organization. How are we doing on the 14 points? We also do it twice in the academy. One of the learning concepts that we use is we actually ask people to put together everything they've learned into a capstone presentation. And every participant delivers a capstone presentation at the end of the academy. And they address these things. This is a quote she used. People show their system diagram. We do a very simplistic one, but we ask them to identify the different concepts of suppliers, processes, core products and services, distribution, consumers, feedback. How do we design, redesign, supporting processes, and of course, where we focused on our aim. They realize they're part of a chain of customers. And this is where we look to not only who our customers are, but what's the job that they're trying to do in order for us to be able to learn how to serve them better as far upstream as possible. And we adapted that from Brian Joyner and Associates because they use the same approach, or did use the same approach. These are concepts that they want to share. They talked about their flow chart that they built, before and after. We did several PDSA cycles to modify this process, and they used prediction and moves to begin learning. They used a control chart to look at, do I have some kind of special cause going on in my environment? They learned some things about developing better answers to their 3 basic questions. And actually, I asked them to update their 3 basic questions at the beginning of each unit. And you can see that the progression as people go through the academy of their thinking and their clarity around answering these questions. And it takes some practice. You can't just answer these off the top of your head and think you're going to be good at answering useful questions. And then Lisa, she went beyond 7 all the time as far as here's moves I could make that would produce improvement. She's up to 20. So these are ways to evaluate what's an improvement here. And then her moves to improve. These are all different ideas that she could test. These are all potential PDSA cycles. And then she looked at, so this is a model for improvement that API put together. So this is the nice structure in a nutshell, and that people can use to make improvement on a regular basis. This is her theory of knowledge mind map. Everybody produces something that looks really unique and different, but every day we ask them to take what they learned. They take 2 quotes that I deliver them around theory of knowledge. In fact, I posted some of those quotes. If you click on my links that I post on those, I have short little video clips that go through and show the different quotes that people get during the academy. And then I asked them to connect these things to their own experiences, both their teach to learn experiences and their PDSA cycles. We talk about, in psychology, sources of fear. We review and go over the red bead experiment, of course. And then they talk about what was their experience like. So what did I have to do? What were my challenges? Did I have to face when I came to the academy? What I resisted. I asked them to talk about what they resisted. And so a lot of people say, I resist the teach to learn stuff. And almost always everybody who says I resisted it, by the end of the course says that's one of the best things I participated in. And then what did I do to handle my challenges? So, and then here's what I say the results were that I produced. So this is fascinating. So people get, and this is a very short, so they're not only working, but they're trying to do something where they're trying to learn the concepts, and then they also try to apply them. So here's some things that they've, done and created. In this case, Lisa was working on something that had to do with organizational things. So naturally, I use a lean concept around 5S to support her in that work. So those kind of things. I integrate lean sometimes in some of the personal coaching I give to people, because sometimes that's appropriate in their situation. And then I ask them to put something in their calendar for what's next. So create a structure for the future that says, I'm going to be doing more. So, that's, and every person says some version of that is really a powerful opportunity for us to learn. This is an example of applied taught in our daily sessions. We used to have boards that we would ask people to go up to and say, what was the concept you taught and who did you teach it to? Let me go. I've got, I applied this. I think I have something close. Yeah, so this is it. So for instance, appreciation for a system. I taught this to Brooke in a discussion with Sandy about our system. Or I taught appreciate for a system. I taught all these things so she taught the system of profound knowledge to this particular person. More applied taught concepts. So, yeah. So that's a summary of that. That's a lot. So
thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. I just got one question to ask you. How are your students motivated? How do you get the intrinsic motivation from them, or there is extrinsic and intrinsic motivation to go ahead with this concept, which I'll speak to you a little later. How do you? What is the motivation for them?
So when in day 5 of the academy, we teach psychology, and we use a concept around motivation that Mary Jenkins taught at GM Powertrain. Mary Jenkins was asked by Dr. Deming to begin to apply his principles into the world of human resources. Her definition of motivation was collaboration, choice, and challenge. So I think the motivation piece that we talk about is, how do people get motivated? First of all, they have choice, complete choice over what it is they're working on. They generate the project ideas. They evaluate the project ideas based on criteria that I give them, but it's their scoring. They interact with people in their environment in their workplace around, are these good ideas or not? So you have some version of something that's important to them, and they get to pick it. So they have that choice. And then typically it's challenging, because opportunities to learn means that we don't have a solution to this, is one of the key scores on that scale. Meaning there's a challenge here. We don't know quite how to do this. And then throughout the academy, we look for, are there ways that you can collaborate with other people around this? So I think that what we try and do is fulfill collaboration, choice, and challenge as elements of motivation built into what we do. We don't try and add it in. Now, it might be that because people typically are selected to go to the academy by their managers, they might feel that there's some expectation that they produce some kind of result, or they participate in some fashion. That may be it. I don't expect people to be in the academy who are not participating. In fact, I've actually asked people to leave the academy who are not participating. It's a waste of their time and my time if they're not engaged, and they don't have to be there. So, we make arrangements with the organization to bring somebody else in, maybe not this session, but maybe next session, to replace that person, that sort of thing. So, we only want people that want to be there to participate. So if they're clearly not motivated, it's something that we don't try and force on them. But I think the structure is such that most people go through motivated because they're interested in the project. They want to learn about how to improve it. And a lot of them want to learn how to become better supervisors and managers in their organization.
Well, that's great. Because of just lack of time, I'll have to, but I'm going to call you again. But one thing I want to ask you is quite simple. And it is this. How do I apply the same concept, what you said, to my friends here? No, my friends here. Can you see?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm trying to, one of my mission is to connect continuous improvement professionals across the world. And I would love to use the concept that you taught me. And I have got one episode, one series that is going on, which is called Single Minute Digit Exchange of Thoughts. That is in another 20 minutes. Two of my guests, and you are now become eligible for being my guest on SMET. They have to develop a concept. Now, I'm going to use your what you taught me. That let me see how one person takes the teaching from the other. Let's see how it works. I'm going to enjoy this, and thank you very much for being there for me. And well, thank you a lot. And this is my. I really enjoyed it. I thought I'd have to ask a lot of questions on Deming, but you covered everything.
Oh, thanks. Well, I enjoyed being here. I really appreciate you letting me share like I did. And thanks for the invitation, Dr. M.
Yeah, that's good. So thank you very much. And I'm going to stop sharing. And see you soon. And I'm sure we'll have one more session, which which I had marked. But then your talk was so, I was so engrossed in what you were talking that I said some other time. So I'm not going to leave you, Eric. I'm going to be with you and have you on again. Thanks a lot.
Excellent.
Stop
Okay.
sharing.
Bye for now.
Yeah, just hold on. You can't get rid of me that fast. So let me stop recording.